Jim Joyce, quite a look there, man.
I got I knew the energy levels were a little challenged this week, so we wanted to see things through rose-colored glasses,
You know what? Love it. And even though so much shit going on, the shot must go on, right?
The shot must
So
go
that's
on.
the shot must go on. Yeah, I don't know. I'm sort of still recovering from my first kind of big trip, right? Like in what, a year and a half-ish, right? So the Boston trip last week. Just I didn't realize that how much I actually liked eating at home and versus like
Yeah,
eating out and the drinks and this and that, just stuff happening, and like I just didn't
there's a
even
whole
feel.
rhythm. There's a
Yeah,
whole rhythm to it, right? Like that you're just not used to. You're just like you're not trained in it and socializing, even though you're very socializing with people. Imagine if you weren't, like if you're
yeah. I
introverted.
guess if you're like, I mean, I don't think, and we'll talk to the our guest who is waiting in a minute on maybe on that too. But like, I don't
Right,
think there's such a thing as like you're extroverted all the time or introverted all the time,
100%.
right? Like we all
Right,
go through phases. I also need my quiet time. I also
right.
need my, wonderful partner in crime time and others.
Exactly.
Um, so I am looking forward to speaking to our guest today. I actually, well, you know what? Let's let him in. Gil
He's gonna.
Bash.
I think he's. I've heard Gil can carry us through this Wednesday. This is gonna be Gil Wednesday. this is,
It will be Gil Wednesday.
Hey there, how are you, my friends? Now, where are you, first of all?
That's a
well,
very good question,
very good
Jim.
question. Dublin, Ireland. Jim, good to see you, Gil.
Good to see you, Jim. This is going to blow your mind. I had a conversation earlier today about my interest in Ireland professionally, and
Yeah.
I just sent an email while I was waiting for us to kick off
Right.
to my colleague who's the head of Europe about
Okay.
my growing interest in our organization having a footprint in Ireland.
Ooh,
So,
nice.
yes, from a health standpoint,
Okay.
now Brexit, of course, has changed everybody's perspective of where they need to be.
Right.
And obviously your neighborhood right now has become very, very important to us.
Yeah. Well, we are very welcome. We want you here. So
I,
more the
I
merrier.
especially let's pimp out the October HealthXL as well. That looks like that's going to be happening in October. And Gil, before we go into your introductions, I think you're going to be, if I'm not mistaken, in Israel in October
That's
for a
right.
wellness conference. So while not, really in the neighborhood, still much closer. So maybe.
Yeah, I'll tell you, starting at the beginning of August, because of HIMSS, I think the world has sort of said we need to start to reconnect physically. And we're physical creatures, and as strange as it feels, and I was watching, Eugene, all your reunions in New Jersey with all of our mutual friends.
That's right.
I think we feel connected constantly through this, sort of like Zoom-like platform.
Right.
I think that we've tired with two-dimensional Zoom relationships. I think we yearn to go back to the three-dimensional world. And I'll say
it felt
one
really
thing.
good to give hugs, I have to say.
Yeah.
It felt really good, heart to heart.
You'll appreciate this. I was at breakfast with John Nosta, Joe Dustin, I think Shwen, Gwee, Angela Radcliffe, and Craig Lipset. And along comes Marianne Rizek, who you probably know. And she's the last to the group. We're outside, she's hugging everybody. And I said, as she finished hugging the last person, I said, now, Marianne, I want you to guess which one of us isn't vaccinated. And I thought, I saw this look of terror across her face, because it shows you the influential power of I think we're all okay. But the moment you take that away, it's like, I really feel threatened.
Right. Yep. Right. No, it's a classic thing. Oh, they're okay. Don't worry about it. Like, well, it doesn't mean they're okay.
Yeah, and that's
so Gil. So Gil, we have so much to unravel and unpack, but like, you know, some of the little facts that I found out by listening to Mike Biselli's podcast with you on it, a few others, I think, Jao, etc. But like, I actually never knew that you were a combat medic. And I also just learned that you're also a rabbi, like, and private equity and communications. And like, I was like, holy, I mean,
Who is this guy?
Yeah, this guy's like a superhero.
No, look, both of you are superheroes. You and Jim are like the superheroes. I am.
That's what he says.
I'm an evolution. Yes, he has superhero glasses. Holy mackerel! Look, I'm an evolution. I'm totally an evolution, and that's what's kept me vibrant and relevant. But forget about that. It's really, to me, about constantly finding purpose and defining purpose and making a difference in the world. And so in each of those roles, Eugene, that when I stepped into them, first of all, they're not disparate roles. They look like soldier, rabbi, private equity guy, communications leader. What does any of this have to do with anything? And actually, it's all interconnected. So first of all, I got to be a combat medic in the paratroopers. I was first a paratrooper, and then I was slated actually to go to commander's course, and I was, I won't go into the details, I was very seriously injured. And I ended up in the hospital for about
in the US or?
In Israel.
In Israel.
So in and out of the hospital in rehab for 6 months. What got me there and how I was treated by obviously a very eager medic unintentionally almost killed me with morphine. He was so frightened I'd be in terrible pain and wake up in terrible pain that he kept on, sort of adding a little bit. And first of all, I slept for the best sleep I think I've ever had in a long time for about 12 hours straight. I'd been unconscious, and then I was just asleep.
Wow.
And then I began this rehab journey. And I really saw the difference between compassionate physicians and apathetic physicians. And my well-being, my recovery was really dependent upon engaged, passionate physicians. I mean, that was really clear. I could have lost my leg from the apathetic physicians. It's like, maybe we'll just cut off the foot and be done with it. So,
right.
So you see in the earliest stages of life how communications and connection actually influence outcomes. My outcome was strong because I had physicians who were upfront, who told me what we needed to do together. They actually used very early stage innovative therapies, neurotransmission therapies in my leg to jumpstart the nerves in my foot. And this is, we're really talking about the earliest 1980s, 1979, 1980. That was like, huh? But this guy said, let's go that way. I returned to my.
You look so young. Did they give you some kind of?
I was just gonna say some. Yeah.
I actually,
what else did they do there with that? What other treatment did you get?
I follow Eugene and his wife. Their suggestions for good behavioral health and healthy living.
There you go.
And that keeps me vibrant. But in any event, I returned to the unit. I wanted to become a combat medic. I graduated as the outstanding combat medic of my class. I was assigned to be the combat medic for the person who had been the commander of what they call commando paratroopers. I did that for a few years. But in that time, forget about handling wounded colleagues, which I did do. I also handled wounded civilians. War affects its ravages on people, not just combatants, civilians. And I really developed firsthand, I saw the struggle of mothers and children, of grandfathers with their grandchildren. And I made a pledge at that time that, one, if I survive, I would do everything I could do to help humanity in gratitude. But also, having seen people's pain, it ripped open in my heart a a chasm for the pain humanity feels. So that's the background of how that leads to that. As a rabbi, I'd go to hospitals, by the way. I would actually be in hospitals where people were leaving this world for the next, and I'd be with the families and with them. And often when the family would leave the room and the person was, let's say, at Memorial Sloan Kettering, I would say to that person, "How are you doing?" They'd say, I'm okay, I'm okay. I said, "How are you doing?" And they would say, I'm tired of this, I'm tired. And from that, I learned something, which is truth. Truth about what's going on. I said, your husband is not going to say, pull the plug. They're not going to do that. If you have a preference of where you want your life journey to go, you have to advocate for yourself right now, because your children and your husband are going to hold on to you with their fingernails. What do you want? So,
and those are all tough discussions, right? We we had the one slide discussion, right? Like that, to be prepared for death. I mean, wow. we had a guest on the show as well,
right?
Alex Drain. I don't know if you know her, Gil.
I don't know.
Yeah, so that was a big sort of movement that she had through the Health 2.0 days. It's just, you need to have these discussions early on and be prepared, right? So,
yeah.
But like, okay, so who is Gil Bashe? Who is Gil?
The morphing Gil Bashe.
Yeah, that's
no.
I said to someone, I'm the caterpillar who morphed into another caterpillar, who morphed into another caterpillar. I'm like in transition constantly, but
So you're ready to be a butterfly now? That's.
I don't think so.
After this show, no, you're not.
Well, after this show, maybe after this show.
It's funny. I asked because Gil, we hadn't interacted, and I'd seen you online and everything. But I asked my colleague, my co-founder. I said, "Oh, we've got Gil Bashe coming on." He's like, "Oh, Gil," and I'm like, "Well, like, give me, what do you think?" And he's like, "Yeah, he's kind of a tempered, he's kind of he's a tempered, wise John Nosta."
Don't say that to John Nosta. If John Nosta were here, he would be like,
John's very wise.
I'm tagging him on this. I am tagging John.
So I love
absolutely.
John, he's gonna explode.
But let me say this, but maybe John Nosta is a brilliant Gil Bashe.
That's the ultimate compliment. I love John. We're dear friends. We're dear friends. And one of the things I love about being with both of you and Nosta and all the other people we have in common is there is some common thread. I think we all come from the brothers from another mother or siblings from another mother. But there is something about us that is still idealistic and believe that somehow or another through this work, we will improve people's lives. John Nosta would say something like, "Gil, that's bullshit." Because he's a contrarian. But when you peel away the contrarian of John Nosta, he's just like you and me. He wants to do
at the end of the day, though, right? And this is like, you kind of mentioned this around, compassion versus being apathetic. At the end of the day, it's also communication in the right way, right? And how do you communicate with different target audiences and people? And I think sometimes we in healthcare, right, forget that communication is actually one of the key components, right? And people work with people, and it's not two sides of the equation. It's really the same. I loved your comment on constantly finding purpose, just together communicating and finding that purpose. This is how you build teams. This is how you get out in the market. This is how.
I agree. I was having a conversation this morning with a young colleague who I think the world of, and I was commenting on something she had written, and I said, you write so well, but you're writing from your vantage point to what you want to say to the other person. Factor in their experience of your words and what they need to hear and how they might respond. And, I think that the three of us, especially, that there's an analytic component to us as people, but also us as communicators. I think the ultimate communicator or communications is about making a connection. And, I think that the challenge we have is we want to tell our story. We want to share our point of view. But really, if we were to stop and think for a second, we want to bond to each other and get something done for the sake of humanity in our field.
Yeah, it's funny on my wall back here, like you can't see it because it's on the inside, but we have we have empathy, empathy on the walls, but then some. Well, what's the definition of empathy? And then so my definition was, and I probably got it somewhere, but it is to be able to achieve the true context of another person, and that was just your child, and then we kind of have it on the wall because that's communicate, right? Like if I can't, I want you, I want to tell you what I'm thinking or whatever it is, but like if I can understand how your context, how you're taking it in, your communication goes from.
Yeah, look, I mean, this is old thinking, sort of like the Stephen Covey days, where you sort of first seek to be, first seek to understand, then be understood. And, I think that in health, particularly, that I'm often amazed at the physicians that I really, I think are extraordinary, and those that I think are extra brilliant. And often they might have a lot of knowledge, but it's really the ability to connect with someone who sits in front of you and inspire them to connect to your words or to connect to themselves. And perhaps it's one of the reasons why our developed nations have a sick care system. We don't have a healthcare system. Right. I sort of secretly laugh at those words, healthcare. I mean, in this country, I don't go to the doctor if I'm to feel well. I actually do, but most people actually go when they're not feeling well, when they're sick and they want care. But the thought of actually investing in people's lives so that they're inspired to self-care or wellness, that's just not part of the health system right now. And we're wondering why in the United States, I can't speak to Ireland or Spain, Barcelona, but in this country we're spending.
I'm in New Jersey now, man.
Oh, okay, yeah, you're one of us now. You're stuck.
Yeah, for another month or so.
Okay, I have to go visit you then, and
I was gonna say we need to, because I don't think we're that far away, but we'll.
No. Do you like Indian food, by the way? Like Indian food?
I love Indian food.
I just found the best place for Indian food.
Is that Ritesh's restaurant?
It
I
is.
was thinking that. I was thinking of Ritesh's restaurant.
Yeah, that's the thing. You got to fly.
I'm heading over there tomorrow, Gil.
Well, do me a favor. Snap a picture from that place and tag me when you tweet it out, and I'll tag.
We'll do.
Right. So I've just joined. By the way, I've just been accepted to the Raj Curry Club. It's a special club that he leads, and I'll send you the link. But he determines who gets into the club. So.
All right, I'm gonna work on it. I'm gonna work on it tomorrow.
But I'll use my pull here. I'll use my pull. But
right.
I look at this whole world right now, and I say to myself, we're spending 18.7% on GDP, and we're sick and getting sicker. And then Hong Kong spends 6% of GDP. They live 10 years longer than we do here. And Bloomberg calls it the most efficient health system. So I asked them recently, I asked the head of the biggest hospital, the biggest payer, a government agency, why? And you know why? Because of what you do. They connect everybody early on in their lives to digital tools, and they send them inspirational information about eating well, of exercising. And so why are they less sick? They invest.
But Gil, I had this aha moment the other day as the girls are with me. We went to get a cold brew or something, and they're like, we'll get a small, right? So a small in Europe is a small. A small in US is like, they're like, oh my God, that's a small.
Right.
And this whole supersizing, like everything with sugar, the large sizes of everything. I mean, that's just, it's, to me, it's just like, now it was like a big aha moment. I'm like, that's it. We're just like Americans just like to eat more.
I gotta build on this. I gotta get this off my chest here of like what
Let's do it.
What qualifies as coffee in the US. Like, I'm just back up, like,
like
it's this idea, like,
I'm not a coffee aficionado, and I don't make coffee. I'm an instant coffee person. But when it comes to my instant coffee, I'm a patriot.
But when when they walk in and they order these, like you said, this like giant
grande,
creamy, mocha covered chocolate, whipped cream or whatever it is, and then they say,
you forgot the syrup. You forgot the syrup,
right? The syrup, and then they put the word cafe on it. It's like, oh, I'm just going for a cup of coffee.
And a cake on top, and
And that's true. Look, you said something I wrote about 2 years ago.
It was like one of my friends said they're going to start eating salads, and I look over and you order a salad and then order a hoagie, a sandwich, and put on top of it.
Fries, and don't forget my fries on top. I wrote a piece about 2 years ago about, everybody's complaining about the drug bill, the pharmaceutical bill. And I said, guess what? It bothers you. It bothers me. It should bother us. Most of this is for non-communicable diseases, where our air quality, our water quality, our obesity are all tipping points to non-communicable diseases. I mean, we've got in this country 90 million Americans who are pre-diabetic.
Mm-hmm.
Only 1 in 5 even know they're pre-diabetic, and 20% of those people graduate from pre-diabetes to diabetes actually every year. So we're replenishing, diabetes is the biggest growing business in America. Get into it if you want to make a mint. But that's the inherent problem. The biggie size it adds obviously carbohydrates, which add weight, which add to cholesterol, heart disease, add to your blood glucose, A1C. We're actually, our economy, our consuming economy is fueling our healthcare industry. And the healthcare industry is being blamed for trying to engage. It's a little bit like, hey, you're bleeding to death. I'm going to try to, use a tourniquet, and you say, how dare you sell tourniquets, to this issue. So I don't really get it at this point. I don't think anybody feels they own it. I think that, Eugene, you and you're trying to tackle this from actually being at the pioneering stage of getting people to engage and own the fact that this is the most precious thing we have, right? This shell.
Self-care, accountability, but everybody needs a guide on that journey, right? That's sort of how we're tackling this. And by the way, it's not only on the sort of pre-chronic, because the reality is we're all pre-chronic, right?
Right.
But also the amount of work that coaches can do once you do have a chronic disease as well, right? So yeah, we actually did a whole Your Coach in the last, pimping out Your Coach in our season recap last week.
I would make a suggestion. I find, and by the way, don't say anything. You could say that's a stupid suggestion, Gil. But I think that
it's going to be out there, so
Well, I think that part of the challenge that we're facing is that your energy, and others who are getting into the field right now, where it's needed so desperately, it's fragmented. I've written about, and I think scale moves machines. The reason why Apple or Microsoft or Google or Amazon get stuff done is big and powerful. And I think that the more you connect, more you find your partners, and you connect, even if they're perceived your competitors, the more people in the space align around the behavioral health movement. I think the more people are going to say, wait a minute, we're spending a ton of money on health. Well, why? And we're not even getting health. We're just getting just-in-time fixes. Maybe we should actually invest in health. And I'm rooting for you. I can't say for Jim. I don't know if Jim is rooting for you as much as I'm rooting for you, but I'm really rooting for you.
No. I mean, he's definitely rooting. Like, the mental health sessions that we have every Wednesday, it just speaks for itself. So
we saved each other a few times. But
thank you, Gil. Yeah.
But glad to see you're rooting. You might be better at rooting.
I am. Go.
I wanted to touch something on, we talked about, obviously we now have platforms, and same thing, right, Gil? Like, you and I followed each other for many, many years. And I think not until the pandemic hit, you and I had a Zoom session. Like, we just, connected, right? Oh, damn it. Yeah, we're not supposed to say those words, but then we kind of, the negative word. But, I think we have the platforms to communicate, that democratized communication. And there was this discussion, I think Matthew Holt, jabbers on Twitter around, well, digital therapeutics and digital health and the costs need to be in access. And then some of these DTXs are going and charging more than the drug. And what are your thoughts on sort of digital health broadly, and access to care and democratizing that access, right?
This is, first of all, I'm a huge fan. I think that
of Matthew Holt, or
no. Look, I have nothing against Matthew. I don't need Matthew going after me today.
I'm busting your chops too.
I know that. Matthew is brilliant, and Matthew is shaking the system. So no, that's good. But on digital health,
one of those things is true.
Yeah. Yeah. He's a good guy. Come on. But one of those, the reality is in our system is people look at return on investment by quarter. And we have to integrate digital health into the system. So Germany, for instance, has made a stand. We're going to reimburse for digital health. We're going to reimburse doctors to prescribe digital health vehicles and apps. In the United States, it's like a nice thing to do. It's not a necessity to do. We've just sort of acknowledged that we're going to get rid of fax machines to transmit data. I shared on Twitter of this little piece of an email I got from my provider that said that they're no longer going to be using faxes. Well, that was supposed to happen in the Cures Act in April, I think of last year, and now we're getting around to it. But some hospitals have banks of 20 to 50 fax machines churning out documents. So one, digital health at the very minimal level has to be used to transmit information quickly to improve people's care. That's given. But in terms of actually, we're looking at adherence, we're looking at everything from of enabling physicians to understand that they're prescribing a drug if there's counterindications to another drug. We're looking at people connecting to their physician in terms of telehealth. We're looking at ways where a brand may have to have a digital health counterpart to make sure you're using the brand correctly, or you're reminded to use your therapy on a basis. We're looking at actually collecting data. I certainly collect my health data on my watch and my phone to track where I'm going. There's no doubt about it. What we're happening is the transition of a generation that grew up on what we'll call historic 1960s medicine and is moving into the modern era. But I would say FDA needs to get behind this. In this country, CMS needs to get behind this. NHS has to get behind this. Certainly Germany has gotten behind this. In Israel, one of the reasons why they got on top of COVID so quickly was actually digital health. When you leave the airport in Israel, you have to stay at home until your test results from COVID come back in. They actually monitor you. You've got to have your phone and be monitored, and they know exactly where you are. They'll pick you up. They'll go visit you, and they have systems in place. So if you look at countries that adapted digital health tools earlier, they're healthier. Hong Kong is a great example. Israel is a great example. Germany is a great example. And I think that you see companies in the UK, I'm not endorsing them, but they're at least exploring the potential, like Babylon Health in the UK. They're exploring the potential of what digital health could mean to the well-being of those people. And I also think that there are parents who really need to engage with their children around their health, who may have chronic conditions and so forth. So we're unfortunately at the very, I don't want to say dawn. Okay, we're not dawn. We're maybe at 6 a.m., 7 a.m. in terms of the digital health movement. But I think in the next 2 years, watch it grow.
But so your support, so these big valuations we're seeing, we've had lots of debates about this on our little show here. Your support, like these valuations, is the problem.
Big show, man. Come on, big show.
Look, we have millions of people watching us right now, Jim. Don't be so
exactly.
Humble. Don't be so humble. But you're talking about paratherapeutics, of course, the famous $4 billion.
Yeah, we promised we promised him we wouldn't talk about it again.
Okay, there you go. I didn't promise, but also
kidding,
there are companies that are privately held. I think they're doing a SPAC, but there are other companies that are really amazing, like Olive AI. They also have a $4 billion valuation, just raised of was it $400 million. There are companies like Medable in decentralized clinical trials that are using digital health tools to engage people. Guess what? These fast-moving companies, they get it. And I think the point you're trying to raise, Jim, which is money, people pay attention to money. $4 billion, all of a sudden people say, oh, I always loved digital. Well, for the two of you and people like me who were there way back when, I wrote my first paper on digital health in 1995. People thought I was like a wacko. 1995. Yeah.
Did you write it in your AOL.com dashboard?
I did. I believe it or not, I was actually, it was not called AOL at that time. I was a consultant. It was called The Greenhouse. And it was in a strip mall in McLean, Virginia. So yeah, I was looking at how people were engaging each other on really difficult to navigate platforms. The human desire to connect is super powerful. Digital health, come on, it's a given.
Right. So big valuations, big movement, and then the question, like as an ex-combat medic, would you define we're in right now as a war?
Wow. No. I think we have fragmentation, Jim. I think that what happens is people have business interests, and their business interests don't align. That's what's happening. Does a pharmaceutical company really understand how a hospital makes money? Does a hospital understand how a PBM makes money? Does the government understand how to reimburse anything for anyone? Do patients understand how the system works? Right. So when you look at all this, it's a mess. We're talking about the jungle. Healthcare is a jungle. And so I don't think it's war. I think we all have our little machete. We're just trying to cut our way through the bush to understand what is going on here.
Right. Awesome.
So what will, I mean, I know just recently, and maybe you can talk a little bit about it, and so forget about art of war, right? Leadership is the key, right? And maybe you can talk a little bit about what you really meant in there. I mean, we all know, right, this ephemeral word leadership, right? I don't know how many books have been written on it, right? But what did Gil Bashe mean on this, and how it impacts the healthcare system?
Yeah. So I gave some snippets of leadership in that piece. People we know and we like, and some people we've worked with or worked for. And I have found that people who are leaders rise to the top of our attention and our admiration when they actually act out of character and do something that's really bold and risky. I think leadership does involve embracing risk. And the challenge is most leaders want to finish out their term as CEO or leaders of an enterprise and just like return on investment, right? Shareholders are happy. And I don't think our world at this juncture can actually be sustainable on that path any longer in many different ways. I'm not just talking about the environment, by the way. I think that although Bill Gates has really sort of tarnished his reputation, but I think don't overlook his words about the environment and our need to engage in protecting this environment that we all are partaking in. We live and we survive on the basis of. But when different leaders stand up and they say, this is what I believe in, this is what we have to do, that's the defining moment. And I think all these leaders need to say, you know what, before I finish out my term as a leader of a CEO of this enterprise, I need to make sure that I find that I've made a lasting impact. I've made a difference in the world that I co-inhabit with all of us, and also that I've positioned us for the good. And I think that rather than position us for the good, they position us for the return on investment. I'm all for return on investment. Trust me, I've benefited from that as well. However, in my own wacko career trajectory, which you decided that you wanted to begin with, I haven't been frightened. I've not been frightened to change course when I felt it was necessary to change course for the good of others. And so leadership for me is the ability to say, this is my charge in heading this nation, this organization, this company. And I'm also interconnected to everyone on this planet. I need to sit back and look, not what's good for this community or this nation. I need to understand what is good for the world. So, I don't want to go into politics per se, but underlined exclamation point. A strong,
which means you're going into politics.
So a strong nation, right? Make a nation great again. Fill in the blank of what nation. That's really sweet, but it's not necessarily what our world needs right now. Our world needs a more interconnected world, and I think our leaders need to step up and say, so we need more justice in the world. We need more health equity in the world. We need to lower disparities and increase access to care. We need racial justice in the world. We need to even look at how we put up buildings and make sure that they're inviting and ecologically safe. This is all the mindset of leaders connecting to other leaders right now. And I think we need a lot more of those leaders.
I'm going to add one more little thing. We were with really good friends yesterday, just got out for about an hour, and we started talking about kindness. The world just needs more kindness, right? It's just and it's not just sympathy, right? It's not actually just empathy, and it just is a small word, but kindness as well. So just my 2 cents on top of that.
It might building off your kindness. I say when people talk about like what's the advice, and we're going to ask you this question in a second, Gil, but is what's the advice for entrepreneurs when they're thinking about starting something or doing something? And I thought about this a lot, like forgiveness was forgiveness, but also being the capacity to kind of forgive yourself, right? Like as you're kind of going through, because when the entrepreneur is going out there and doing it, that you can be incredibly tough on yourself and other people. This is started off deep, got deeper.
Yeah.
No, but I think you're right. I thought Eugene was going to go into the world of Pinksocks and Nick Adkins. Like
that's a huge that's a huge one. As a matter of fact, you guys keep talking. I just found
he's going to run and get his Pinksocks. I'm going to run and get my Pinksocks. People are just going to look at blood.
I just found a few. So here.
So a lot of people criticize Nick and Pinksocks. Like, what's the reason behind Pinksocks? Maybe the only reason is pink socks. In other words, maybe that's good enough of a reason. Is kindness? That's his whole thing? Hugs and kindness. And what's wrong with that? It doesn't. He doesn't have to cure cancer, but I think we could cure cancer through kindness. I think that could be a catalyst to a cure. But to your point about kindness, I have a little card next to my computer where I work, and it says, essentially, how would you feel if someone said that about you? And I really think about that constantly. And sometimes, certainly as we get more experience and someone sends you something which is like, huh? You want to call that person and say, huh? And that card and your word kindness is my restraint, which is they're on a journey too. Why? Who appointed me as the rain on their parade person? No one. Right. And it's hard. It's hard because we want to go to that impatient moment. And yet the kindness and the encouragement is what sparks things. Jim, you said something. I definitely want to engage about this, the entrepreneurs and startups and fear of failure. No one says, I can't wait to fail. I'll learn something from it, which is true, but it's also heartbreaking. But I find that in our field, health entrepreneurs, particularly in digital health or health tech, the reason they fail is not the idea, not the insight, and not the innovation. It is the failure to understand the system of which they're about to engage. The system is the great killer of ideas that can improve the human condition. I'm hopeful that everybody who's hearing our exchange today or into the future is going to say, rather than my shut down this idea because our hospital system doesn't want to incorporate it into our IT system, and we'd have to train doctors, and oh my goodness, and there's expense and time and energy, and I'm too busy. To say, this is a really great idea that could improve people's lives. Let me share with you 4 other people who I think can help you understand how we operate so that you can sort of integrate into the world we live in. And that doesn't happen enough. And I've just been speaking to accelerators and incubators about this, because I think that more startup enterprises, before they sort of like charge into the market, would do well to find essentially an incubator and an accelerator. Spend that 1 year with people like both of you, your supervision and TLC, and then charge into the market. That would definitely be my advice to people with great ideas that can improve the human condition.
Yep, it's the system. So Gil, should we go?
Yeah.
So Gil, go ahead, Eugene.
No, go.
This is gonna be the zinger, right?
No, okay.
Not really. You partially already sort of answered, but Jim has a twist to the question.
Picture yourself a young combat medic coming out of Israel, and you're starting a digital healthcare company for the first time. You've got a phenomenal idea, and you've done a year in an incubator. What advice would you give that young entrepreneur?
First of all, I really invite the question. I just say today, why Israel's the startup nation is sort of producing. Actually, our enterprise has a sort of an industry leader in that market because of the amount of innovation that's coming out of Israel. But the hot army unit right now is no longer my unit. When I was a young person being a paratrooper, you were like, wow. Today it's like, wow, they come out of the IT unit. Wow. Those are the superstars of today because of your question. But a few things. I want to be systematic. One, don't worry as much about your idea and perfecting your idea or engineering your idea. One, study the existing marketplace and understand the customer chain, the ecosystem of why it supports that modality. There's a reason why OBGYNs like ultrasound, or GIs like, sort of like doing colonoscopies. Don't think you're going to say, this idea, this innovation is so much better. They're going to run away from ultrasound or colonoscopy or X-ray or a CAT scan because this could actually give me a complete scan of your body. Understand the economic ties they have and the machinery around that environment, the big companies that have everything at stake. First, understand that. That's one. Two, understand who pays for what. We often think we're going to be disruptors. This idea is so powerful. It's going to save so many lives. It's so much less expensive. They will abandon their $5 million machines to just download my app for $4.95. And they'll be doing at home their own pregnancy ultrasounds and beaming it up to the OBGYN who will assess it. Do not assume that improvement is what the system wants. What the system wants is to protect the system. Study that. Next, who pays for what? Understand this. In Europe and the United States, there's all sorts of codes, reimbursement codes. Who pays for what? Understand who pays for what. Then understand who advocates for what. Who are the thought leaders that have the power to change the system? Don't assume because 15 patients saw it and said, wow, I love it, that 15 key opinion leaders are going to say, sure, I'm going to get rid of my whole department, collapse it into this, and let you do that. So, I think that embrace the reality. Don't drink the Kool-Aid of your idea. Drink the hard whiskey, of the market, and get that down really well first. And then charge forward with boldness. The other aspect is often inventors in one country, you said Israel, for instance, will circle around them key opinion leaders from their market. So if you're in Spain, you'll find key opinion leaders from Spain. If you're in Ireland, you'll get key opinion from Ireland. Your idea, medicine is not a local practice. The practice of medicine in terms of your needs is local, but best practice is global. You have to start to think from day one, is this, forget about my market, how will 10 markets say, I'm on board? The regulatory process is easy. By the way, in the United States, when we talk about 510Ks, this is something I'm disturbed about. Payers will view a 510K approval as investigational use. They will not put a digital health device on formulary. They'll say, no, I'm sorry, it's investigational. Before you go in there, and you can have all the lawyers and all the economists, and you could do a great health outcome study, economic outcome study. No way, no how. Payers actually hold the final card. And who makes the decision on the payers? Experts in your field? Nope. A group of what they call administrative MDs. They don't treat patients, but they know finance. And so I would say we need more digital health innovators not to be in their own hands, to build community, to look at common obstacles, to forge partnerships, to use community as a way of tackling some of the biggest obstacles to improved care, the system. Number one, I would say, study the system. And also don't see the next person as a competitor. Even if there's 50 behavioral health companies using digital health, or 50 companies looking at migraine relief through neurotransmitters, don't think competitively in establishing a market. Think of the term co-opetition. Unite to build the market, compete for the market. So that would be my advice.
Love it. That's probably the most thorough we got out of the 65 episodes.
I was thinking we have to go back and transcribe it and turn it into a small
Holy mackerel.
chapter in a book.
Can I say in my tweet when this comes out, after 65 illuminating episodes, Eugene and Jim have determined my summary is by far the deepest, most systematic.
What I took out of it though is hard whiskey. That's all I heard.
When I see you, we're gonna have to salute.
I typically do, but it's
look, I've got to tell you,
the hard whiskey resonated with me.
21 year. It has to be 21 year for me to even want to open up the bottle. Otherwise, no way.
Well, Gil, we had a challenge for you today, but we didn't tell you about it. Both Eugene and I'm in the middle of a major investment raise. Eugene is facing all kinds of challenges. So we see Gil needed us to carry us through Wednesday. So you successfully carried us.
And you successfully did.
Thank you.
The reality is in terms of investment. First of all, I'm happy to talk. I'm happy to look at decks, and I'm happy to make suggestions always. Eugene, you said kindness. I find that we all have enough time in the day. We really do. And there is nothing more meaningful to help other people succeed and to applaud other people's success. And, I often find I'll speak to a client and I'll say, I think you should share this article, this tweet. And they say, well, my competitor's in there. Why would I do that? It's not about me. And I say, it's not like you both have multi-billion-dollar markets. You're right. They're creating their success actually will lead to your success. And what we talked about at the very beginning is that the challenges to innovation. The challenge to innovation isn't the innovation, isn't the idea. It is actually the system or the environment. So anything I can do to lower the challenge bar, I'm on board. I'm on board.
You did it for us today, and I'm sure you're continuing the journey of doing this for everybody around you.
Yep.
Not just you.
Kindness.
Gil, thank you very much. And for the millions of listeners and viewers, hit that subscribe button, share us out, and happy Wednesday.